Thresh's weakest ability. Which one do you think it is? Oh man, we're not starting this one strong, are we? Why on Runeterra would we begin talking about an ultimate ability like this? Well, given how close Thresh's ultimate is to some other basic abilities, some players would draw the conclusion that it's pretty weak as an ultimate ability. For example, Thresh's ultimate slows for 99%. Another ability that does 99% slow is Seraphine's E at level 1, and that's the least desirable effect, since Seraphine players hope to chain it with other slows and crowd controls to upgrade it to a root or to a stun, sometimes even building Rylai's Crystal Scepter to have it always act as at least a root. So if Thresh's R as a utility support champion has such basic utility, is it really an ultimate, and is it as weak as people say? Does it make up for it in damage? Perhaps in the number of walls available? And if someone were to hit multiple walls, how do the slows stack? Well, I think after years of using it, it's earned its stripes as an ultimate ability for me. To demonstrate, look at this. Not that damage is all it's good for, or we just play Veigar support. Oh wait. The box is Thresh's ultimate, summoning 5 spectral walls with a high base damage and 100% AP ratio for one wall only. Each wall also inflicts a 99% slow for 2 seconds, with every subsequent wall slowing for half the duration and none of the damage of the first. The walls remain once cast for 5 seconds. What's really good about Thresh's ultimate is that it's on Thresh, and you can interact with it in multiple ways. In my over-explanation of Thresh's Q, we talked about this hook combo that guarantees a box wall hit, except against very high tenacity. You trade a longer CC chain for guaranteed hits of a 99% slow, 3 displacements, and the big box damage. With Thresh's 3 total pulls, he can often force enemies into box walls for damage and disruption, which is useful not only for bursting someone, but also actively choosing when and how someone gets slowed. When you flay someone into a wall, you know the exact location they're going to be affected by 2 seconds of 99% slow. This makes it so much easier to predict and visualize a flash range radius around the target to make your prediction with death sentence. Often such predictions come from experience and intuition, but it's one of those things that can inspire fear responses and knee-jerk reaction flashes from enemies that you can use to your advantage. Sometimes the box will begin a combo instead, usually when being assailed by chasing foes. Luring them into the first box wall makes your hook easier to hit, allowing you to walk and pull them into another box wall for a very long CC chain, ending with an additional second of that 99% slow. At this point, it's clear that the 99% slow, while useful, is not what gives Thresh's ultimate power, but instead how you deploy and use it. Something of interest then is the shape Thresh erects the box in. Look at this ability indicator that marks how the ultimate will appear when you cast it. Guess what? It's fucking wrong. Instead, know that in front of Thresh will always be the front-facing tip of the pentagon. This is slightly more forward than the back wall. Ulting forward gets you a little more forward range, useful for catching fleeing enemies, whereas the back wall is closer to you, helping deter chasers. While that's probably all the info you need, because this is over-explaining, this also leads to some fun interactions because Flay sets your direction where you cast it. Flaying someone towards yourself, in other words, pulling with Flay from the tip of its range, will land someone perfectly in the back wall. Pulling someone from right behind you will trap them in the center of the box. Excellent for holding someone down for your team, whether that be for peeling or catching. Pushing, then, when done from right in front of you, will most often hit one of the 2 front walls, but when very close to smaller champions, it does have a chance to miss, though very rare. Pushing from afar will place enemies outside the box, which isn't useless and lets you use the box as a blockade, useful for making a getaway. Generically though, the difference in cast range based on the angle is a very minute detail that seldom comes up. Another difference with other slows is that while they may be targeted abilities or linear skill shots, Thresh's box is deployed on the ground like a trap. It's not real impassable terrain like Anivia, but can still be a huge deterrent. It covers a decently wide area with its shape, and though using it by jumping into a teamfight aiming to hit 5 people with it is fine enough, it has additional usage in covering important areas ahead of time, such as choke points and tri-bushes to cover an escape. Using it to cover an objective that an enemy wants to contest means they're likely to try and jump through it, getting hit by the huge damage and 99% slow, making it a bit easier for your team to deal with the threat if they try to brave through the box. Deploying it early means you won't be encumbered with the 0.45 second cast time, allowing easier times lining up hooks, flays, and even granting free auto attack time while the enemy willingly smashes through the box wall. Speaking of huge damage, the box really does do a lot of it. A base damage of 250 up to 550 is no tiny amount when you can near guarantee it off a hook. It has an 100% AP ratio, while also getting 1 ability power per soul from passive. Also, yes, I have done an overexplain on all of his other abilities before this one, including his passive, so I'll link them all in the description for you. So on any basic build, the Thresh hook box combo will do a lot of damage, but with a large base damage and a huge ratio comes the question, can you build AP Thresh? Of course you can. It's something we've already talked about in other videos, but when you are building ability power, you start prizing the damage of your abilities sometimes more than their utility. You're less likely to throw out ults to block off an area, to cover an escape, or to peel, and you're more likely to save it for the huge combo damage. Is it worth it? Sometimes. Definitely. You're kinda wasting 99% slow since you can't slow a dead guy, but it means the potential survivors on low health are easy pickings for the rest of your team, or follow-up attacks with either AD or AP autos with Nash's Tooth or Lichbane. But moving on from AP Thresh, the ult is not only a goal of your Thresh combos, but also a starter sometimes. Though you can also flay someone into a box like we mentioned, just running up to someone and deploying the box will often force a response, allowing more calculated use of your Q and E. Most likely you'll be doing this while being chased, and as we said before, you can use your Q on the 99% slow target to drag them into another wall, or you can use this to do what an AD or auto-attacking Thresh would call a pro gamer move. While wondering what the heck I could talk about in this video with Thresh's ultimate, I wondered what point I haven't already covered in other videos that would be unique enough of a talking point that it could also make a good thumbnail. And in doing so, I unlocked something. Thresh's box isn't just an obstacle, it's an obstacle course. Thresh only has 450 range, but suddenly this matters all the more to a melee opponent when they're being bombarded with heavy slows. The idea is that you can deploy the ultimate as a literal wall to deter the melee attacker. They either wait it out, allowing you to use your range to auto-attack them down, or charge through it, allowing you to kite with relative ease, and fire in spurts like a coconut gun. This response is where the technique comes in. While in a full-blown escape, you're probably going to run directly away from your opponent, and when using the box, there's another wall for them to run through if they continue. It's a little harder to kite with this, and the perpendicular nature of the wall makes it easy to blink through with flash, but it's still worth it to build the distance when escaping danger. But what if you're not in danger, you are the danger? That's when you make like any good boomer shooter and circle strafe the opponent. Doing this not only allows you to orbit the enemy and stay in your attack range, but angles your subsequent box wall so they can't easily flash through it without tanking another slow, allowing you to easily move back only when necessary. Additionally, the one enemy can only be hit by box walls once every second, meaning they can't just waste every wall straight away by dashing. If they flash through the first wall, they will still take the second wall with good time remaining. Factoring in reaction time, if you're able to kite around a third box wall, then box wall 3 will perfectly stack with box wall 2, with the delay and duration both lasting 1 second. I've made a big deal out of this because we're over-explaining, but it is one of the tools Thresh has against the mobile melees, who actually make a problematic matchup for top lane Thresh by just being so tanky and stat checking, especially with Stridebreaker. That said, this and many of our potential uses for the box's 99% slow become much weaker against any kind of counter building or counter runing. Boots of Swiftness helps reduce the slow effect, and a much greater reduction comes from Phase Rush, so always be aware of opponents that have it. Tenacity like Merc Dreads can make it last less time than you might expect, so try to account for that by playing more cautiously. That said, these tiny, niche techniques are just weapons in a greater arsenal to use when appropriate. Even this far into our deep dive, the question remains, is this really an ultimate ability? Like, sure, you can kite with it, but so can many other abilities. Ashe's W is practically the same thing with way more range. And slows like Seraphine's E, Zillion's W, and others are pretty much just as crippling as the box. I've tried to make a case for it being an ultimate, and while I do think the 5 99% slows are better than 1 and the damage is good, seriously, how did it get like this? Did it ever seem weird to you that while each box wall has half the slow duration of the previous, only the first one has any damage at all. Kinda like how Dark Passage, the lantern, used to shield literally any teammate it touched, so up to 5 shields from just one cast. The box also used to do damage on every wall. Like the slow duration, it did half the damage on subsequent walls. On release, together with how it was a no-brainer to max Q when his E-passive damage used to be on that ability instead, Thresh just did way too much damage for a support champion in Season 3. While there's no doubt with his cheeky 200% AD ratio that he was intended to be a versatile pick who could do more than just support, some things just had to go. And in fact, basically everything had to go. Even though everyone liked Thresh, certainly more than Certainity's other designs, it was as early as patch 3.6 that his auto attack passive was moved from Q to E, his range was reduced to 450 by patch 4.2, and by patch 4.13 did the box stop doing damage with walls beyond the first. The patch history and the ability descriptions on the official League of Legends wiki write it as the box not doing damage to the same target who breaks multiple walls, but if you read it or test it in game, you can see it only does damage to one target at all. Speaking of which, if it only hits one enemy for the full damage and slow duration, how is the primary target determined when all walls come up at the same time? Using these target dummies, you can see that the box is only doing damage to one opponent. On inspection, you can see the slow debuff appearing for 2 seconds, and on everyone else, it slows for just 1 second. All target dummies' movement speeds are reduced to 112, except, well, okay, did anyone else think this? I swear I thought every wall after the first box wall did half the slow percent as the one before it. So it would go from 99% to 49.5%, then 24.75%, and so on. I think I'm just insane, and I'm sure you already knew that, but anyway, tangent over. They all slow for 99%, but all secondary targets are only slowed for 1 second instead of 2. In the test, the target dummy that took the hit was the one in front of Thresh to his right. We can mark this as priority 1, and then the priority goes around clockwise until we reach the lowest priority target, which is in front of Thresh to his left. This means you can theoretically reorient yourself to hit a specific target with the box. This is another fiddly mechanic that messing around with could cause you to miss the box target entirely and actually end up with a worse result. It's probably not something you need to mess with every game, but I mean, if you have the APM and plan to use it, I can't stop you now, can I? It's especially difficult though, since this is overexplaining, because what happens when multiple enemies are on the same wall? Interestingly, with target dummies, it's the first spawned target dummy that takes the full damage, no matter their position in that wall. With my lovely assistant Nasusbot, since he existed before the spawned target dummy, he takes priority on the hit from the same wall. Even when we put him down and he respawns, he still takes the box wall priority. If I had to guess how this priority works in real games, I would assume it either goes in either pick order or from top to bottom on the scoreboard. Clearly, this mere hypothesis is substantial evidence that Thresh was always supposed to be a top laner. Naturally, this is so incredibly niche, but if we cared, we could do further tests to see how the box wall target is prioritized, since we can invite people to practice till now. But if you happen to know the answers somehow, I'd love to know it. As it turns out, 5 99% slows isn't a bad ultimate at all, even if it's not very flashy, nor does it stun 5 enemies like a Malphite or a Mumu could, and doesn't help engage like a Nautilus or Leona rolls. Instead, Thresh's box takes the stage as a more tactical ability, deploying it when and where the Thresh player thinks suits best. I don't even think with its best usages commentators will be popping off, screaming about how that's the best Thresh box they've ever seen, but it plays to one of Thresh's greatest strengths, which is his versatility and adaptability. Even in lore, Thresh took to his new Wraith form very well, exploring its capabilities within minutes of the Ruination, and as such, exploring and finding the best uses for the box is, if anything, flavorful and in character. Escape, catch, disengage, peel, kite, trap, and block. Thresh's ultimate not only represents a powerful variety of uses, but a devastating hit in its potential damage on its purposefully picked opponent, who can only watch in vain as they're dragged down to nigh certain demise. As for how to do that combo off the hook, my video on how to hit your Thresh hooks will tell you both what it says it will do and how to hit that ult combo. I also go into depth on that a bit more in the Overexplaining of Thresh's Q, Death Sentence. It and the other 3 Overexplains will be in the description below if you missed them. But with that, we come to an end of Overexplaining Thresh, or at least for Overexplaining Thresh's abilities. You don't play a champ like this for over 10 years without a stupid amount of things to talk about, such as his various playstyles. I've already talked a bit more about AD Thresh in this video, and we'll talk about AP Thresh in an upcoming one. And a bit later than that, whatever the heck is this thumbnail supposed to represent? But we won't end at builds either. If more Thresh facts and perhaps over-explaining other champions too interests you, then please consider hitting subscribe. Hey, maybe we'll even be looking at champions from before their rework. Videos like this are made possible by lovely members like these, who I'll take a moment to thank. Members get slight early access to videos as well as a special shout out. And so, a special thanks to War Squid, Ultimate Ground, Cryo's Dad, Gentleman Zeta, Lunar Eagle 1996, 53rd Alabama Booty Obi-Wan Kenobi, N Era, AC Immortal, Mr. Noodle, Bass1378, Gilbert Morals, Tiemann Karanfil, Luxius, Dario Castro, Entity 9, Overseer, N Luca, Colorado Cosmico, Hollowed, Lunar Arc, King of the Crossroads of X-Crew, C-Posh, KORC22, Torjiro, Ain't Leo, Orbital Studios, Senya Scrim, Zanata Debrincat, El Pedro Kotel, Kitamiru, and The Bonte. Thank you all very much for supporting the channel.